Skinny Hardaway 7T. I'm back with another EP. Y'all do your boy a favor. Y'all smash that like button for your boy when you roll on in. Whether you're here for a good time or a long time, I greatly appreciate you sliding through. If this your first time, do your boy solid. Don't make it your last time. Hit that subscription button for your boy. We talk this good boxing, MMA, parlays, predictions, football, basketball, collegiate, amateur, and professional every single day, not just today. Today, we here with an MMA, UFC, Fight Night, Southern T. Y'all do your boy solid. Y'all hit that thumbs up. We got Yadong. Just getting settled. Maybe I'm just getting settled in. Y'all do your boy solid. Y'all hit that thumbs up. We about to go through all the fights right now. This fight was due to fight, but they had to move it, shift the card back to America. So now it's taking place in America. So there was a couple throw-in fights, right, that they added in. I'm not gonna run down the throw-in fights, right? There are 10 fights that I know though I set locked in stone that's going to be on the card, right? So those are the 10 fights that we're going to focus on in this EP. Not gonna waste too much of y'all time, right? I'm gonna try to do this right as swiftly as possible because I got to make my plays and my parlays for the rest of the day today as well, right? So we gonna go and get to it. I ain't gonna waste too much of y'all time. We're gonna start with the first fight on the prelim. 5 fights on the prelim, if I'm not mistaken. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 fights on the prelims and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights on the main card, right? Yep. So 10 fights. So we're gonna start with the first fight on the prelim. And I'm not really sure of the order, right? But we're gonna start from the order that they got on the betting sites, right? We using FanDuel. If you use DraftKings, you can follow on DraftKings, right? But we using FanDuel in this. We got Rayana Dos Santos versus Tatalina Alinsar. In this fight, this basically prospect versus prospect, right? Neither fighter is overly experienced. You got Dos Santos, who is more. Dos Santos is more. She's a grappling expert, right? Jiu-jitsu expert, right? So she's more so of a grappling expert, but she do like to swing. You got Alinsar as well, who's predominantly a stand-up fighter. Uh, I I expect this fight to be mostly standing up, right? Because while Alinsar does have, grappling and ground ability, I think if this fight goes to the ground, Dos Santos really has the edge. And I think Alinsar knows that. So I'm thinking it will behoove her, right? At least I would think it will behoove her to keep this fight more so standing up because Dos Santos is dangerous, you know what I mean, with the grappling, especially from the back, with the submissions. I think all around, like the stand-up game, right? It may be tit for tat, right? You go either way. I think in the clinch, if it goes to the ground, Dos Santos would be the better fighter. And I'm expect, and while Alinsar, right? While I think Alinsar's best chance is to, keep this fight standing up. I think her natural instinct is, you know what I mean, to grapple the clinch naturally. And I think, that's where Dos Santos edges this fight. I do think on this card in general, right? It's a few fights on this card that's a toss up. This is just one of a few fights. I feel like it's kind of a toss up, right? But I edge Dos Santos's overall ability in this fight over Alinsar. So in the first fight, Dos Santos versus Alinsar, we got Dos Santos for the win in that fight, right? We gonna keep it moving. Versus we got Carlos Hernandez versus Tahira, right? Tahira in this fight, I think he's better. His stand-up game isn't really that good, right? Hernandez is better in the stand-up game, right? But Tahira, he keeps most of his fights on the ground. He keeps most of his fights at grappling range, and I think that's what he's going to do. He's the taller fighter in this matchup, right? Tahira is not like physically imposing, but he got a good he got a good technique about him, right? He's good at taking the back. He's good at making fights mucky, right? He's good at imposing his will in these fights, and I think that's what he's going to do with Carlos Hernandez. It's not his style to come out striking at all, right? So I don't think Tahira's just going to, all of a sudden become this striker, right? So I think he gonna come out here. He gonna stick to the game plan like he always do, make it a wrestling match. And while this could turn out to be a bit of a dud, right, a bit of a boring fight, because I don't really think Tahira is going to finish Carlos Hernandez. He could get the sub, right, but I wouldn't necessarily think he's going to finish Carlos Hernandez. But I do expect him to be able to dominate this fight from the grappling position with the, with the wrestling and the grappling. So I got Tahira over Hernandez in the second fight on the prelim. So I got Dos Santos in the first fight over Al-Nassar, and then I got Tahira over Hernandez in the second fight. Moving right along, we got Luna Santos versus Stephanie Edgar. Again, another one of these fights I think is a toss-up, kind of like the first fight, Dos Santos and Al-Nassar. Santos, not Dos Santos, right? Santos versus Stephanie Edgar. In this fight, I think Stephanie Edgar more so wants to have this fight in the clinch, grappling on the mat, right? And Santos, while she does possess some grappling ability, I think, her advantage in this fight would be the strike. Stephanie Edgar is the more experienced fighter in this fight. Santos is about 6-1, if I'm not mistaken. Y'all know I do these things at the top of my head. Santos is about 6-1, if I'm not mistaken, and Stephanie Edgar has over 20 fights, something like that. So, we got experience versus youth in this fight, right? Stephanie Edgar is a bigger fighter than Santos. Now, Santos has looked spectacular in her UFC fights up until this point, right? But I think in this fight, Stephanie Edgar's size and I think her constant pressure and her wrestling is going to be a problem for Santos. And I think I edge Stephanie Edgar in this fight, right? That'll be my first underdog of the day so far, right? Stephanie Edgar over Luna Santos. If this fight is standing, then I edge Santos. I think Stephanie Edgar may be outclassed on the feet, right? But Stephanie Edgar likes to grapple. She likes to take these fights to the ground. And I think her size is going to enable her to do that in this fight. Her size and her ability, right, is going to enable her to do this. Going to do that in that fight. And I got Stephanie Edgar, in another one of these close fights we got tonight, edging it out over Santos, right? So I'm going to do the rundown after I make a pick, just to catch everybody up that's coming in. So far, we got Santos in the first fight, Tahira in the second fight, and we just picked Stephanie Edgar in the third fight over Santos with the first upset of the night. Moving right along, we got Park Han-sung versus Shannon Ross. Shannon Ross hasn't got a win in the UFC yet up until this date, right? So they put him in there. They put him in there with Park Han-young, and I don't expect him to get his first UFC win today, right? Park Han-young is predominantly a wrestler, but he's a wrestler that does, like to strike, that does know how to strike. Does Park Han-sung, right? Does Park Han-sung, right? Ross, I don't think he's a UFC level fighter, honestly. I don't think he's a UFC level fighter, which would make sense that the reason why he's never won in the UFC. If I'm not mistaken, he came off the Contender Series and he lost on the Contender Series, right? So he lost on his Contender Series fight and then he got to the UFC and he hasn't won yet, right? Not really sure how he's sticking around this long, right? But I got Han-sung and probably knocking out, Shannon Ross. I think Han-sung should win that fight, whether it's on the ground, which is what he does best, or whether it's standing up. Shannon Ross really don't do nothing best, right? You know what I mean? So I got Park Han-sung in that fight over Shannon Ross, and I'm ultra confident, right, in that one. All right, so we got Santos over Al-Nassar, Tahira over Hernandez, Edgar over Santos, and Han-sung over Shannon Ross. Moving right along to the last fight on the prelim. Another one of these tough fights, right? A toss-up fight. We got Kenan Sung and Kevin Jousset. Kevin Jousset, if I'm not mistaken, is the sparring partner of Stylebender Israel Eliasanda, right? So, that's a little feather in his cap. Now, neither one of these fighters have looked overly impressive, right? Not bad fighters at all, right? Just haven't been overly impressed with either of these fighters. I actually do like the matchup. Two guys where I'm expecting this fight. I'm expecting this fight to take take place on the foot for the most part, right? And I think you got like boxer versus kickboxer, right? Sung is like basically boxer, right? Technically, he's a boxer, right? Stand-up guy. And then you got Kevin Josette, who's a kickboxer, right? So I'm expecting this fight to be, a stand-up fight, right? I'm going to edge Kevin Josette, right? I feel like he's the rangier fighter. Big Tex. What's good, Big Tex? Appreciate you sliding through this thing. Glad you can make it. If you could, hit that thumbs up for your boy. Appreciate you sliding through this thing, Tex. I'm just rolling on through this thing, right? But I digress. We got Sung versus Josette, right? I'm expecting this fight to take place on the feet. Boxer versus kickboxer, right? I'm going to edge Josette in this fight, right? I think he's the rangier fighter. I like him better technically than I do Sung. I think Sung may be pound for pound the heavier striker, right? But I think Josette is going to be able to touch him up, kind of often and be able to get this fight. If he does stop him, be like TKO. But I'm expecting this fight to go to a decision, and I got Josette, you know what I mean, winning that fight probably by decision, right? So I'm going to run back down my winners. I'm going to give y'all some methods if y'all want the methods. In the first fight, we got Santos versus Alisson. I got Santos decision in that fight. Don't really think nobody getting stopped in that fight. Right, maybe Santos stopped a submission on. Alisson does have a decent ground game, so even if she's losing on the ground, right, I think she may be able to fight off a submission, right? So I got Santos. Maybe you go submission or decision, right, with Santos. So Santos submission or decision, right? We got Tejera versus Hernandez. I'm not expecting Tejera to stop Hernandez, right? Submission possible, right? But I'm not expecting him to be able to get a submission off on Hernandez. I think Tejera on the points will be a good play in that. If you're suspicious of the submission, maybe you go submission points on it as well, right? But I think Tejera should be able to edge out a wrestling victory over Hernandez, making it a slow, boring, drag-out fight, kind of like Tejera does, right? If that fight is exciting, then something went wrong for Tejera, right? If it's nice and boring, then Tejera probably is going to win that fight by a landslide, like the Vegas odds say he should, right? So we got Tejera over Hernandez, decision or submission. Stephanie Egger, I got her upsetting Luna Santos. I got Stephanie Egger decision. I don't think she'll be able to stop, Luna Santos. I don't think she'll be able to submit Luna Santos. I do think she'll be able to control her on the ground with her size, right, with her experience. I think it's going to be a problem. This is basically grappler versus striker, right? I think Stephanie Egger is an experienced enough grappler to be able to, to grind this one out and get the win over Santos in that fight, right? So I got Stephanie Egger over Luna Santos in that fight, grind them out type of win. I got Park Hung-sung over Shannon Ross. Don't think this is a competitive fight at all. I think Park Hung-sung go Park his Hung-sung, right? Probably go stop him. Hung-sung is more comfortable on the ground. But with this guy, right, I don't even think Hung-sung is going to feel, a major threat to have to get this fight down to the ground, right? So I got Park Hung-sung over Shannon Ross pretty much. Either way he want to do it, right? You can go money line in that one, which is what I'm thinking. Maybe you go money line KO in that one, right? I don't even think this fight make it to the ground, but I digress. And then I got Kevin Josette, right? Slightly edging out Kenny Sung. I think this is another one of those toss-up fights, right? Sung, Josette, kind of a toss-up. Dos Santos, Alisson, a bit of a toss-up, right? So Josette versus Sung, I think is another one of those toss-up fights. I think this is a stand-up fight. I think both fighters are more naturally comfortable standing up, right? And I'm edging the kickboxer, right, over the boxer in this fight, Kenny Sung. I think Josette is able to get the victory against Stylbender's training partner, right? So I think that's going to come into play, and that's going to help him out a little bit in that fight. So I got Kevin Josette in that fight, and those are the 5 prelim fights. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are my 5 prelim winners. So at 16:30, right, we got the prelim. I'm going to put this in. I'm going to timestamp it just in case. I might just do the roundup at the end, right? But I'm going to timestamp it just in case. So it's 16:30. We got the fight. We got the prelim roundup, right? So those are my prelim winners. Those are my prelim winners, no method, just my winners, right? But we gonna keep it moving right along to the main card again. I ain't gonna waste too much of y'all time with this one because I gotta come back and I gotta make the actual plays for the day, right? Gotta win me some money. Gotta do my homework, so I'm gonna be back a little later. You know what I mean, for the night shift. Just want to come and get this UFC card in real quick, right? But I digress. Now we got Young Park versus Andre Muniz. In this fight, I'm going John Young Park over Andre Muniz. I think Andre Muniz is basically in this fight. He's just going to get out athleted, right? Going to get out mixed martial art. He's going to get out athleted. Andre Muniz, he looked like he's fighting, and he looked like he's. I think he's outmatched in this fight, right? The odds are minus, 186 for Young Park. I think those are good odds, for what the fight is worth. Andre Muniz, I know he's talented and whatnot, but he's getting up there, right, in age. He is heavy experience, right? But he just slow, man. I think in this fight, especially when you compare him to Young Park, he's just slow. I think Young Park is probably gonna knock him out. Andre Muniz, he's not the most technical guy, right? He's good at what he does, not the most technical guy. I think he's slowing down. I think the years and the wars and the attrition is kind of getting to him, and I favor John Young Park in the fight over Andre Muniz. I just don't. I think it's a bad matchup for him, right? I think Park is just a much better athlete in this fight. Good odds on Park right now, right? Minus 186, almost 2-1, right? Good odds if you parlaying it, right? Not if you taking the single, but good odds if you parlaying it, right? So we got Hung Young Park over Andre Muniz in the first fight on the main card, right? And then we got Khalil Roundtree versus Anthony Smith. Now, I'll be real with y'all. I almost went Anthony Smith in this fight, right? I don't overly believe in either of these fighters. Khalil Roundtree has looked good recently, right? Anthony Smith, he's Anthony Smith. He's gotten up there, right? He's taking this fight on short notice as well. This is going to be stand-up versus grappler. Grappler Anthony Smith, stand-up Khalil Roundtree. Anthony Smith will engage in the striking game. Khalil Roundtree wants no part of the grapple or the wrestling game, right? I think in this fight, Anthony Smith is going to want to come out here. He's going to wrestle him. And I think he may be able to do that for a round, maybe even a round or two, right? But I think eventually, especially with it being short notice, Khalil Roundtree has been looking good recently. While I'm not overly believing Khalil Roundtree, even on his streak, right, about 4 or 5 fights, while I'm not overly believing Khalil Roundtree in the streak, I think he has enough to beat Anthony Smith, especially coming in on short notice, right? If Anthony Smith can make this a muggy kind of fight, a grappling, wrestling kind of fight, take Khalil Roundtree, take Khalil Roundtree down and keep him down, right? Then he got a chance. And I think he may be able to do that for a round or so, but I think eventually, each round starts on his feet, right? I think eventually Khalil Roundtree is going to catch him with something, and the fight, he's going to turn that fight into, a stand-up fight. I think Anthony Smith is going to have trouble, taking him down, keeping him down over the course of the 3 rounds. I got Khalil Roundtree. I think that's a close fight, right? I got Khalil Roundtree. I'm not overly confident in it. If you want to go Anthony Smith, maybe on the dog in the ground and mouth fight, you think he can last the 3 rounds? Probably so, but I think eventually Khalil Roundtree is going to catch him. Anthony Smith is probably going to get, tired from trying to hold Khalil Roundtree down. While Khalil Roundtree doesn't have great ground game, right? He is a pretty good athlete. He has a decent gas tank. I've seen him gas out before, right? But there was a little earlier, right, in his career. As of late, he's been on fire. I got Khalil Roundtree in there, right, over Anthony Smith. Should be a pretty interesting fight. But I digress. And another one of these toss-up fights, right? We got Jamie Mullarkey versus Nasrat Haqparast, right? I always butcher Haqparast's name. Haqparast, I'm probably still saying it wrong, but we gonna roll with it. We got Mullarkey versus Haqparast in this fight. Again, this is a toss-up fight. I bet on Mullarkey all the time, right? I've won with Mullarkey. I've lost with Mullarkey, right? Made me real happy, made me real sad. Won a knockout with Mullarkey. Lost because Mullarkey was winning the fight, then got knocked out, right? Haqparast is a guy that I'm not overly confident in. The UFC is extremely confident in Haqparast, right? And I'm not really sure as of why, right? Mullarkey was a prospect that came into the UFC, seasoned prospect, one of Conor McGregor guys, right? Seasoned prospect that came into the UFC, right? With some height. He's about 50-50 in the UFC right now, right? So he's about 1-2, 2-2, something like that. If I'm not mistaken, again, y'all know I do this off my head, right? So he's been hit and miss in the UFC, right? I should say. He's been hit and miss, right, in the UFC, right? I should say. nonetheless. Again, one of these toss-up fights, Malarkey and Hasselhoff. I done been with Jamie Malarkey in every fight, right? My heart wants to go with Malarkey, right? My mind is telling me to go with Hasselhoff, right? I'm gonna go with Jamie Malarkey, man. I'm gonna go with Jamie Malarkey. I'm gonna go with Jamie Malarkey in the range now. While Jamie Malarkey's power has seemed to disappear in the UFC, it also seemed like his chin has taken a bit of a hit, right? I don't think Hasselhoff is that good of a striker, right? I don't think he's a better striker than Malarkey, right? Who's kickboxer. He's a kickboxer, one of Conor McGregor guys. I don't think he's a better striker than him. And I don't think Malarkey is going to be an easy guy to take down in that fight again. It's a toss-up fight, but I'm gonna go with Jamie Malarkey, man, as the dog in this fight. Again, if you want to lead this fight out, you can lead this fight out. I'm gonna ride with Malarkey. If Malarkey let me down this time, I'm gonna be completely off that Jamie Malarkey train, right? I'm expecting Jamie Malarkey to turn around and get it done. I got Jamie Malarkey over Nasrat Hasparas, right? Those are names in there, John, right? Jamie Malarkey and Nasrat Hasparas, right? But I digress. I got Jamie Malarkey over Hasparas. We got Alan Nascimento versus Submerger, right? I know I'm butchering his name. That man got one name. Sumudaerji, right? Samadri, right? We got Samadri versus Nascimento. And I know I'm saying Nascimento right? This name is a little easier to say, Nascimento. Samadri, that man got one name. Ain't no last name or nothing. We won't even do that over here in America, right? But I digress. I got Nascimento winning anyway, right? Samadri is a stand-up fighter. Nascimento is a ground guy. While Samadri does have a size advantage over Nascimento, I think when that fight goes to the ground, because it will go to the ground, I think Nascimento just has a huge advantage. If that's not enough for you, Samadri also has about 4 losses on his record. Every loss he has on his record, right, was by submission. Nascimento is a submission specialist, submission grappling specialist, right? So I count him on trying to do the math on that. I got Alan Nascimento over Samadri in the main event. There is a chance where Samadri may catch Nascimento, but I'm doubting it. I'm thinking Nascimento gonna come out there, close the distance, take him down, and it's gonna be murder she wrote. You know what I mean? I got Nascimento over Samadri. I'm trying to get this all within the 30, right? Because I got some bets that I need to make, right? I'm gonna come back here for the nightcap. Y'all know. He said, yeah, this is pretty. Yeah, appreciate you slide through this, Joe Marky Dan. Glad you can make it, pimp. In the main event, right? UFC main event. Shout out my guy Marky Dan. I got the prelims on the screen, right? Those are my prelim winners right there. 5 prelims, 5 main event fights. Dos Santos, Tahira, Edgar, Hai Sung, and Josette. Those are my prelim winners for the UFC. I'm running through the main event winners right now. I'm going to drop them in the chat when I finish. Appreciate y'all folks sliding through, whether y'all catching the playback or y'all in here live. Glad y'all can make it. Let me go around this thing up. I ain't trying to waste too much of y'all time. We on the main event time, right? The 5th main event fight. We got Sung Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. I've won with Chris Gutierrez, right? I've lost with Chris Gutierrez. I've won with Sung Yadong. I've lost with Sung Yadong, right? I think this is an interesting matchup. If you ask me who I think the more technical fighter is, right? I think it's Chris Gutierrez. I think if Chris Gutierrez had any kind of power on his punches and his kicks, right, he'd be an undefeated fighter. He'd already be a champion right now. I think Chris Gutierrez comes up short when he can't hurt guys. He can't knock guys out. He can't, outstrength guys, and they end up overpowering him. They end up walking through his punches and maybe stopping him, or they end up grounding him out, right, and just laying on top of him because he's a smaller guy in that division. Maybe if he could move down, I think he'd be, maybe a champion already. He's a guy who gets outstrength, right? Not very strong with his strikes, but very accurate and very tactical, right? If the fight goes the distance, Chris Gutierrez is probably going to win with the amount of strikes that he's accumulated over the fight. Got great leg kicks, does Chris Gutierrez. He's going up against Sung Yadong. Sung Yadong, right? He's also a stand-up fighter. This fight is most definitely going to be fought standing up, right? And I think Chris Gutierrez falls short in this fight only because of the things that I mentioned earlier. I just don't think he has enough power in the strikes. I don't think he's a strong enough guy in the clinch or wrestling. While I do think he's good in the clinch, where I do think he's a decent wrestler, he's not physically strong enough, I think, to beat a lot of these guys. right? And especially a guy like Song Yadong. I think Song Yadong has more power in his punches. I think he's physically stronger, and I'm going to edge Song Yadong in the main event. You know what I mean? This Saturday night. So I got Song Yadong over Chris Gutierrez. Probably decision. I don't think he stopped Chris Gutierrez, right? I don't think he submits him. I think he goes the distance. Chris Gutierrez is a very tough guy, right? But I got to take Yadong because I think he's just going to be able to overpower him. It was a chance that he stops him, right? But I'm not going with the stoppage, right? I'm gonna go Yadong, decision over Chris Gutierrez, right? And I'm gonna drop, the main event winners in the chat real quick. I'm gonna drop the main event winners in the chat real quick. We got Young Park, right? We got Young Park. We got Roundtree. Right? We got Malarkey. Right? We got Nasamito. Right? And we got Yadong. Song Yadong. Right? So those will be our picks for the day. Let me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And that'll be the main event picks right there. At 29, we got the main event picks. Let me go and give y'all the rundown of all the picks real quick. I'm gonna let the main event picks ride out. 29. The first fight of the day, right? We got Dos Santos over Alisar. We got Tahira over Hernandez. We got Stephanie Edgar over Santos. We got Park Han Sung over Shannon Ross. We got Kenan Song and Kevin Josette. We got Kevin Josette in that fight. The first fight on the main card. We got Young Park over Andre Muniz. This fight was supposed to be in Japan too, by the way. We got Khalil Roundtree over Anthony Smith. We got Jamie Malarkey over I'll be butchering his name, over Hack Paras, right? We got Alan Nasamito over Samadri, and we got Sung Yadong over Chris Gutierrez. Appreciate y'all folks sliding through this thing, getting hard away, Southern T. This ain't the past, this ain't the future, this is the present. That's how we rocking, and I'm out. Love.